So, hi there. Welcome to the Be Illuminated podcast and the Be Illuminated YouTube channel or Be Priestess YouTube channel. I'd like to welcome Robin Youngblood today. She is a Cherokee or Tsalagi elder, and we are just going to flow with the conversation today. Robin just came back from an honoring dance for the grandmothers, so I'd love to hear more about that, Robin.
Oh, well, I'd love to share because it was beautiful. It was so tender. There were about 20 of us and grandmothers from all different walks of life. And by the way, I'm only a little bit Cherokee. I'm a lot more Okanagan from up around Canada, BC, and Washington. Yeah. Um, so I know more of those traditions than I do the Tsalagi.
Okay.
Um, but there were Cherokee grandmothers there. There was a Rolling Thunder's daughter was there, Shahowin. Um, Grandmothers from all over the South. It was wonderful, you know. Um, we gathered together. Our hostess, Kathy, um, kept calling all of us for months and saying, "What are we supposed to do? I just know I'm supposed to do this." And we said, "Don't worry about it. We'll get it when we get there, right?"
Hmm.
So we spent Friday night just in a talking circle, giving suggestions about what was coming through us to do in the dance, right? And we had four grandfathers there.
Hmm.
And those four grandfathers took care of us all weekend. They held the fire. We gave them directions and they took them.
Was Bert there? Was Bert able to be there?
Bert was there, David, a young man named Josh, and an elder named Joe. And the other three mentored Josh through the whole weekend. And man, they poured him full of wisdom. Yeah. And
So
he
cool.
loved it. He was just, at one point, I had him leading part of the dance, an infinity figure, a figure eight.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see him every once in a while glance over his shoulders and making sure that the pace he was setting wasn't too much for the grandmothers. Just precious. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I am a follower, a devotee, I don't know the right word, really a student of the shamanic beekeeping traditions of Europe. And they use the lemniscate
Yes.
for walking meditations. It's such a powerful way to move into and out of a reality or into alternate places. So I just love that connection.
Our teaching in the medicine wheel, most people think of it as a flat construct of rocks, right?
Mhm.
It's not. It's a hologram.
Mhm.
As above, so below, as within, so without. And the north-south line for the medicine wheel that I use, everyone's a little bit different,
Right.
but the one that I use, the north-south line, is the ancestors' tool, our personal life, passion, and purpose. The south is the place where we grow up from children to young adults, and we get passionate about things, and all those passions are driven by our life purpose, our reason for being here.
Hmm.
Okay. But if we have things to heal with the ancestors and in our ancestral lines, we often can't do it. Yeah. So we bring in that figure eight, that infinity, because we're the center of our medicine wheel, and we are bringing that healing to the ancestors and their wisdom back to us. The
Gotcha.
gift of
So
that.
so just to clarify, when you're dancing the lemniscate, you are the knot, the place where the two loops meet, and then the ancestors are one loop, and your life purpose would be the other loop.
And that's from the north to the south. But from the east to the east is the place of new beginnings, the west is the place of healing. If you have a new dream and a new vision, but you're blocked in some way, you've got to heal that. Yeah. So
Mm.
when we dance the east to the west loops, that's what we're doing.
Mm.
Yeah. So we did both. And we did many other movements as well that were all divinely inspired. And there was such flow. Nobody had to remember anything. If a grandmother needed a break, we brought chairs out into the arbor. We've never done that before, but we brought chairs out there. And if grandma needed to sit down for a few minutes, she sat down for a few minutes. It was about self care as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And what we noticed is that we were building this soft but very vibrant energy field. And
Mm.
at the end of the dance, we sent it out the East Gate to everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, it was precious.
I can
And
feel
then
the
Sunday we
softness.
did pipe ceremony. Yeah. And had a lovely brunch together. Oh my gosh, Becky was there from Center for Peace in Tennessee. That woman can cook.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was the
We had
dance all weekend or was it 2 days? Was it 2 days or just one day?
Well, we got there Friday. We danced on Saturday. We did the last round of the dance for everybody, including the guys. Yeah, on Sunday. And then we did pipe ceremony and brunch and went our ways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we were at Sacred Grove. Have you been there?
I have not. No.
Oh, go sometime. You'll love it.
This was
Um,
in I remember it was gold something in North Carolina and I wish I could have gone. Like I saw it pop up and I couldn't. I had my daughter came home for the weekend and there was no way I could have gone, but I'm hoping to make the dance that you're having in June.
that one's going to be at Center for Peace in Seymour, Tennessee. Everybody's invited. If you go to the Center for Peace website and click on dances, Dance to Heal the Earth will come up. You can register there as either a supporter, an earth keeper, or as a dancer.
Hmm.
And it will be 2 days of dancing. We'll have Sweat Lodge and Feast on Friday night. Saturday, we'll dance the 4 directions. Sunday, we'll dance 3 directions above, below, and center. And then we'll have another big feast. It is a fasting dance.
Got you. And you break for the night when you do
Yes,
the
we do.
dances.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, and we ask that the supporters and the dancers camp in a little bit separate spaces because we want the dancers to be able to stay in the spirit world through those 2 days. So we don't
Mhm.
want a lot of intercommunication and all that kind of thing. If supporters need to talk to somebody, they can talk to me and Bird, or we'll have somebody in the kitchen to help and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that
It's a
makes sense.
beautiful dance. It came from a very tragic circumstance. Um, I survived a mudslide that killed 43 people up in Washington.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And 4 times over my life, I have been told by medicine men that the original Sundance was a woman's dance. It was not a piercing dance, it was a dance of gratitude and joy to the tree of life for basically for life, because women are the life givers. And
Mm.
after the mudslide, the first thing that happened is that I heard Mother Earth screaming while that mountain was coming down, saying she never wanted that to happen. She didn't want people to be killed. Yeah. We found out later that they'd clear cut on the mountain where they weren't legally supposed to, the
Mm.
loggers, and that when the rains came, there were no rocks and tree roots left to hold the
Right.
water. And that's why the mountain came down. Well, Mother screamed at me that she needed me to be a bigger voice. And about 3 months later, a picture had come up with me that a friend had painted many years ago in the 90s. And it's of a Cherokee night warrior. And his eyes told me that we would be saved. Yeah. Well, that picture got into the paper and on the news channels and all that kind of thing. And the man who painted it sent me another painting about 3 months later, and that same day, I got a letter from Dee Smith, who is a Cherokee elder, and she said there used to be a dance called Dance to Heal the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know how to do it anymore because we haven't done it for so long. But that dance needs to be danced again. This is the time. And it needs to go out to all people, not just to the women. So that day when I received that, I looked at the painting that he had sent, and it's an Indian woman in her shawl, which is the color of the mud. And when I turned it over, he had titled it Earth Mother Dancing.
Wow.
And everything came together because I had known for years that whatever I was supposed to do was a dance, but it wasn't a sun dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that rise up too, Robin. I had a woman, do you know Lakota One Heart?
I don't think so.
Okay, she lives outside of Abingdon, Virginia. And I used to go to lodge with her pretty frequently and did a peace dance with her. And she came here on Saturday. My land wants ceremony, and I cannot do a lodge. Like, even if I did know what to do, I don't have the time for it or the space, but I don't know how to do lodge. This is years and years of training, not something to be done lightly. But this land that I live on wants ceremony. And so I think we're going to have dances. And one of the things that she's feeling, very similar to yours, is the peace dance and the dance. She calls it the dance to mend the hoop, I think. And one
Mhm.
of the things that I received as part of my Magdalene priestess training was a dance called the dance to mend the sacred hoop. So there's so many little pieces that just come together from everywhere, and this is what the earth is calling for now. You know what we need to heal
Dance to
ourselves.
Heal the Earth is, yes, it's a dance of sacrifice, but not suffering. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a dance of joy and gratitude to the tree of life, but also it's seeking, asking our guides and helpers, great mystery, all of that, Mother Earth, how can I help? What is the gift that I have that I can contribute to the best and highest for all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that includes mending the sacred hoop.
Yeah, the sacred hoop is all nations, right? Bringing all
Absolutely.
of humanity together as one, because we are one.
You wouldn't believe that if you listened to all the division on Facebook.
True.
But, you know, the other teaching of the medicine wheel, let me get inside here so that I have a light. There we go. The other teaching of the medicine wheel is there can be an infinite number of spokes on the circle of life, and every single viewpoint needs to be respected and valued. That you really can't make a good decision until you've heard everybody's voice. And it's okay that we're all different. We all see from a little bit different perspective around that wheel. But when we get the whole picture, we can make much better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We when we open our hearts and stop looking at others as competition or conflict or something to strive against, and begin to see others from our heart instead of, I don't I don't even know that it's our mind. It's some sort of cultural
Our
indoctrination.
programming.
Yes. Yes. Perfect word. Everything changes. You can't stay in the frame of mind of being separate from people when you're here.
No, you can't. Black elk, one of our, a Lakota actually, famous medicine teacher said the longest distance is the 18 inches between the heart and the mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And our minds have been so polluted from every direction. Yeah,
Mm.
that it's a whole process in itself. And that takes most of our lives to
Yes.
deprogram ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we can deprogram in a whole lifetime. I feel like it's something we can work on and get a long way with, you know? So
Hmm.
I'm wondering if we can shift gears a little bit and I can ask you where you learned these ceremonies. Were these things that you grew up doing? Were these things that you were called to and studied?
My parents, especially my mother, she was a blonde haired, blue eyed Cherokee. And she married a very dark skinned Okanagan man. Okay. And I'm darker skinned than she was. And I used to have long, dark hair. And she was terrified for me. She was terrified I'd get, well, they still have boarding schools where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved us off the reservation. And I didn't get to experience any of that until I was in my 20s. And really, the minute that I got out of the house, I started searching because I knew there was more. I was raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother at one point gave me the ring, I don't know yet whether he was Welsh or Dutch, but the Youngblood came from that side. And he gave my great grandmother a ring that was two pieces of corn. It was in silver, but it looked like two pieces of corn that were joined in balance. And there were scallops for the wampum or whatever it would be called that he gave for her hand. And in the back, there were two arrows that met. And my grandmother told me all this story, and my mother immediately took the ring away from me because she knew I would tell other people the story. Yeah. So when I was old enough and got out of the house, I headed back to the Okanagan Reservation because it was the closest for me.
Did you grow up in Washington State?
I grew up in Oregon and Washington.
Okay.
My grandparents were in Washington, so I spent a lot of time up with them.
Okay.
But my parents got as far away as they could go.
Which was Oregon.
Yeah. So when I started going back to the res, I started meeting Native people from many different tribes. And of course, this was during the time of AIM
Mm-hmm.
and the protests and Wounded Knee and all those kinds of things. And
It's a really intense period of our history. Like there
very
was some
intense,
wild
very
stuff going on.
scary stuff.
Yeah.
I was a young mom. I got married 4 days out of high school, and I had two kids in 20 months. So I did do some hauling elders around and stuff. And I'm not going to tell all those stories because I found out some not so nice things that were going on. Yeah. But I met a lot of leaders. And at one point during, this was probably the early 90s, I took a course to become a shaman with true Olchi Siberian elders. They were in their mid 80s. And Mingo and Misha they were powerful, let me tell you.
Mm.
But I was also studying with as many other Native elders as I could. And, excuse me, cold. At one point, just a sec.
It's okay. I'm just going to pause us for a second while you.
Oh,
Okay, so we had a little break because Robin has a cold and she needed to go do a little self care. So we're back, and I have no idea where we left off.
well,
Okay, good.
I started to say that at one point I was living in Kirkland, Washington, and
Okay.
I had a big kitchen and a big dining table. And I had people like Thomas Banyaka of the Hopi, Humbotzman of the Mayan, Prince Eo of the Dagara people, Maki Ruka, said it backwards, of the Maoris, my Siberian teachers, and a bunch of other people sitting around the table. And they were all telling their prophecies, some of them in their own languages and with a translator, of the times that we were coming to.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's this time. And one of the instructions that my teachers gave me at that near that point in time, a little before it, was to go out and learn from as many Indigenous people as I could, because they said the original story is that when the clans began to break off, become their own tribes, they were each given a nugget of wisdom and a ceremony to hold until the time when we could all come back together again. Not to homogenize things, but to honor each different system. Yeah. And to give it the value that it needs in the wheel. So they wanted me to go learn all this. Well, all those people came to me. I didn't have to go anywhere. And they would sit around the table and they'd tell us, there's going to be plagues, there's going to be wars, there's going to be these gigantic storms that flood everything. There's going to be huge wildfires that are going to take out whole countries. You need to be aware of this. And there is a way to stop it, but it means that you may have to make changes now.
Mhm.
Well, this was in the 90s. Some of us listened, a few of us made some changes, but not nearly enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we are where we are now. And they called this the time of purification.
Mm.
They said a lot of the things that you have thought of as your creature comforts, mostly which are oil based, are going to have to go away because it's not good. It's the black snake, it's hurting everything. And, when I was at Standing Rock, of course, they used the black snake as the symbol for all of this. So I've watched all
Wow.
of this most of my adult life.
Mm.
And Dance to Heal the Earth, the reason for the dance is Mother Earth needs our help.
Yes.
And we have to heal ourselves in order to be able to help her.
Right. You start here because until you've done the work here, you can't do it out there.
Nope.
There are all of those sayings, right? You can't get blood from a turnip and you can't give water from an empty well. There's a reason why those are cliches, right? Until you fill yourself up, until your well is full, there's nothing to pour out onto others. But once your well is full, then you can irrigate the gardens all around you.
And part of that is looking at our shadow and accepting it. It's not our enemy, it's our early warning system. You and I both know that because we've done that deep work. Yeah.
Mm.
But it can be really scary for people who haven't done that,
Yeah, it
who
is.
spent their life avoiding.
When I was doing my when I was attending the shamanic priestess process before our shadow work weekend, we had a whole like 3 or 4 days devoted to the shadow between women. And we were told like women get up and leave this weekend. They get so triggered that they can't stay. Circles break apart, these huge rifts happen. And um, I I guess I just sort of went out of my body and dissociated, and I was like, well, it's going to be fine. And it really wasn't fine. It was really, really hard to do that work. And I will be forever grateful for the information and the tools from that, because I use them every day of my life.
Mhm.
Like, we're not here to be perfect. We're here to do the work and keep at it.
Exactly. And yeah, I very early on, I was asked by elder women to do a woman's drum circle with a big drum.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. You got to be kidding me. Do you know what I'm going to get from the men if I start a women's drum? And they basically said, you need to do this, do it. Okay. So I did. And yes, we got it from the men. But what really happened in the very beginning was that we all got to see the competition of the women.
Can you tell me why having a big drum circle for women would be a problem for men? Because I don't understand that, and I doubt that I'm the only one who won't.
In Native culture, the big drum now belongs to the men. They use it in the powwow. They use it to drum and sing for ceremony, etc. And they seem to have, in some tribes, they have a belief that it was always theirs. The tribes I come from, the women gave that drum to the men to
Mm,
settle them down and bring them back into balance.
mm,
Now, when something's been traditional for a couple of 100 years,
mhm.
it's seen as it's always been that way.
I wonder how much colonization has affected that.
Oh,
For
but
example, were the men always sort of, this is what men are and women have to do what we say? Or is that something that they learned post colonization and just took on? And I know that's a big question, because it's not going to be the same for every group of people. It's not going to be the same for the Dene as it is for the Iroquois, you know?
exactly. There is no such thing as pan Indian. And
Right,
that's something that's really hard for New Age people to get. Okay. But every tribe was different.
right.
Several tribes that were originally, there's a difference between matriarchal and matrilineal.
Mhm,
Okay.
right.
Or patriarchal or patrilineal. Anyway, some tribes were one or the other, some worked together. Yeah. So that they kept the balance. Some tribes were patriarchal but matrilineal.
Hmm.
That was their way of keeping the balance.
Mhm,
Others were matriarchal and patrilineal. So it's
mhm,
it's very different from tribe to tribe, and that was long before the colonists came.
mhm,
However, when the colonists and the Christianity came,
mhm.
whatever honored women was tossed out the door.
Right. This is what happened to my people too. I come from the Celtic tribes, right? My people were also tribal people, and the women were warriors. And we didn't necessarily have marriage. You had lovers who you made families with, or you didn't, whatever. And
Mhm.
then Rome came, and we've completely lost touch with that over the last 2,000 years. And now here we are in the US, where the same thing has happened in the last 400 years. Is 400 really? Same thing. And I hope that there whatever scraps the indigenous people of North, Central, and South America are able to hold on to, that they can hold on to it and allow that to continue to grow and be a living, breathing
There's
tradition.
a lot of reclamation going on,
Mhm.
and a lot of talk about cultural appropriation. And I think we need to be a lot more careful with that term than we are being. I was on a group recently on Facebook. I won't name it, but there were people on there that were shaming and blaming and hollering and just denigrating anybody who was a mixed blood
Mm.
or anybody who had, they weren't just pointing out colonization or cultural appropriation, they were damning people for it.
Well, that's also part of the colonizer culture, right?
Of
Because
course.
in the indigenous groups in the United States, adoption was usual, right? And once someone's adopted into the tribe, they didn't look at you and say, Robin, you're not really Danae.
Oh,
That's in the front of my mind because I read an article or something this morning. But you're not really that because really you're Okanagan and Cherokee and you really, so we've adopted you, but really you're not part of us. Like that didn't happen. You
it
just,
still doesn't happen in real situations, okay? I am adopted Ojibwe, Lakota, and Anishinaabe. Yeah. And they've graced me with many of their traditions. Am I enrolled? No. And that was a personal choice, actually um, influenced by my enrolled cousins. Because at the time that I had the opportunity to do that, um, they were very angry at the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, for the way that they were withholding funds and treating our nations. And my cousin said to me, "Do you know where they got the idea to give us a number, or where Hitler got the idea to give the Jews a number? From the United States government numbering us. We are the only peoples in the world that have to have a number to prove that we're Indian. And it's based, of course, on blood quantum." Well, in the original ways, it was always based on kinship, and kinship means more than family. It means the ways that we approach and love and care for each other.
yeah. I have a daughter who's Cherokee and blood quantum is, obviously she's my daughter. So, it's only from her father's side. Um, and she's very connected to this lineage. Like your mother, she's blonde haired and blue eyed. And her older brother looks more like his father's side of the family, right? He's darker. He can't go outside without getting a tan. He's got these beautiful root beer brown eyes. But she's so much more connected.
Well,
I mean,
I have a duo too. My son's very dark haired. My daughter's blonde and blue eyes, although it's getting darker as she gets older. Um, in my family, because they were raised with me on the Sundance Trail,
mm,
they know all the stuff, but they don't use it unless there's a crisis.
mhm.
Okay. They are not going to be me out there spreading things around the world. They're like, "Yeah, mom, we know."
Right.
But the minute something happens, man, the sage comes out.
Right. It's in their medicine bag. It's just they're not drawn to the same path that you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. You know?
I
Um,
I think we hear the songs of our ancestors in different ways. And some of us have a certain pull to
mhm,
one thing more than other people do.
I think that's true. We're all unique.
Yeah.
We all come in with whether we understand it or not, we come in to follow our purpose. Yeah.
Right.
And it doesn't even really have to. I mean, people all the time ask me, how do I find my life purpose? And I tell them, well, list 4 or 5 of your passions and find the common denominator. It's one sentence and you're already doing it because you can't not do it. Okay. So everybody, we're all spokes on that medicine wheel. We all have to have, just think how boring life would be if we all believed the same way and did the same things. And just think how much wouldn't get done because we're all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would be, I mean, there's something to be said for this. We are kind of all doing the same thing, right? We're
Sure.
Can you imagine like life being just that? Everybody just and never looking up like
Unfortunately, I see so many people with these things and they're not looking at each other, even though they're standing next to each other.
yeah.
I'm like, what is this? I hate this. But I don't really because I use it, right?
Yeah.
So it's
It's a
that
great
one.
technology, great tools.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And we stay connected to so many people. Like you and I wouldn't know each other if
Oh,
it
I
weren't for
know. And
the
it's been
internet.
such a blessing to me.
Yeah. It's amazing. And also a tool, not a way of
Mhm.
life.
You know, one of the parts of the Hopi prophecy, there's, do you know that prophecy?
Somewhere in the back of my mind I know I've heard it, but I it's not
Okay.
present right now.
Well, it's it's a petroglyph on a rock and it shows a straight line. And on the straight line is a man and corn and a water source. Okay. And then there's another line that goes jagged upwards from that line. And you can tell it's a vibrational buzz. Okay. It's chaos.
Yeah.
And the Hopi say that, especially in this time that we're in right now, we need to know our community, our food source, and our water source. And we need to take care of those. Okay. The way that we get into the kind of chaos and division that we're in right now isn't because of the technology. It's because we're letting the technology control us.
Mm-hmm.
If we stop doing that and use it as what it's meant for, a tool to form community, a tool to know where our water sources and our food sources are, then we're fine. But if we walk around like blind people just looking at this thing, we aren't going to get what we are looking for here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. What else, Robin? Is there you were so one of the things that you wanted to talk about, and you brushed up against it a little bit, but it was about, and I'm not going to word this the way you did, but about consumer culture and overusing comfort items. And so I'd love to hear if you have anything that you want to share about that as a way to help heal the earth.
Yeah. Um,
That's part of the dance, I think.
it's part of the life dance for sure. Yeah. We're, I believe most human beings are doing the best they can with what they have. Okay.
Mhm.
So I recycle. But what I found out when I lived on Maui is that they aren't really recycling. It costs tons of money to send this stuff off to a recycling plant that will change it into a different form to reuse it. A lot of smaller communities, whether it's Maui or here in North Carolina or wherever, don't really have the funds to do proper recycling.
Mhm.
So a whole bunch of stuff that shouldn't end up in a landfill does. We need to examine those things. What do we need to do about that? Yeah.
One of the things, I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday. One of the things about recycling is that you have to put clean items into your recycling, because when you put things into the recycling that are full of food, it contaminates the process. So if you throw like a spaghetti sauce jar in the trash can and it's full of sauce, that can contaminate a whole
Yes.
bin of other clear glass, and it all has to be trashed because it's
Yeah.
been contaminated. They need clean items.
So thank you for that, because that is a word that I don't think most of the general public knows yet. Yeah.
Mhm.
They don't realize it, and they don't want to take the time
Right.
sometimes to rinse that bottle out. So it goes in the trash,
Hmm.
even if they do know.
And it's appropriate to throw it in the trash if you don't want to wash it out. Don't put it in the recycling.
Well, it is, but then we fill up landfills.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not good either. Um, the other thing, of course, is looking at what can we make in different ways. We're now getting, I just read an article that said that they found microplastics in people's lungs.
We are full of microplastics. I've been listening to that as well. Full of them. And imagine getting rid of plastic. Like I'm sitting here at a plastic table with a plastic computer and a plastic light, my plastic phone, and my pen that's made of plastic and metal. Like everything is
Every
plastic.
time, you know, I just, there was a whole comment about things that you're not going to do anymore. And I said something about single use plastic, and people are like, what the heck is that? Plastic bottles like you get your water in, the
Mhm.
plastic wrap the butcher puts over the meat that you buy. Um, all this stuff that you get at Walmart is all packaged in single use plastic.
Right. Think
Mhm.
about the produce at Trader Joe's.
Exactly.
You know, it's,
And it's a healthy store,
yeah.
right? There is one person I know in New York City who has a shop where you can buy everything in that shop is not wrapped in plastic.
Wow.
And she is at zero garbage for her shop.
Wow.
One person.
I
Okay.
have a friend, actually, Robin, who lives in Marshall, who for years she was blogging about this, called Traceless Living. She lives right on Main Street downtown.
Okay.
Um, and sh- they're pretty much zero waste in their home, but it's not easy to do, you know?
It's not. I can't do it. I've tried, and I've certainly limited a whole lot of that,
Hmm.
but there are things that I can't at this point. The same thing, like everybody's wondering what to do about all the vehicles and the emissions and all those kinds of things. And there's a lot of work being done on that, and I really appreciate it. I just invested in something that it's an EV battery, but it's not based in lithium, it's based in salt. Okay. Which is much more reusable, recyclable, renewable, sustainable, etc. Also, it doesn't blow up. So, and we're going to run low if everybody goes to EVs and they keep using lithium. It's going to become rarer and rarer and harder to access. So I've been looking for ways that we can be more sustainable and more renewable and get off oil dependency, because we have to.
Hmm.
It's just not working, and it's not working around the world. Even if you look at what's happening with the Ukraine war right now, Ukraine is the breadbasket for most of Africa. It's the lithium source, it and China, for most of the world.
Hmm.
The reason that Putin wants Ukraine is because it's so mineral rich.
Hmm.
and he can make billions off of it,
Right.
right?
Money.
Always goes back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Money and renewable resources. But we look at all those things, and it's like this great big warning sign. Do you remember the song "The Sounds of Silence"?
Mm-hmm.
And the prophets wrote on the
Subway
tenement
walls
wall.
and
Yeah,
tenement. Right.
right. Well, that's happening, and it's been happening for years now. Only now it's to the point where it's a great big glaring neon sign. And we have to do things to ameliorate that, or our grandchildren aren't going to make it.
Yeah. I mean, the best scientists in the world have told us we have less than a decade to go before climate change is irreversible. And I don't think it's just death of humanity. It will be the death of the planet. That doesn't mean we are going to disappear in 10 years. It might take hundreds of years for climate collapse to be complete. But we have reached a point where we're almost at the point of no return. And slowing down, there's so many things that we could just stop doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We could combine our trips instead of going to the grocery store and coming home and go to the drugstore and coming home. We could, you know what I mean, go to the grocery store and the drugstore, like run our errands all in one day. They're
We can call our neighbors and say, "Do you need anything in town while
right,
I'm there?"
right.
Just friendly stuff.
Yes.
Whatever.
The way
Mhm.
communities used to work. And, you know, I'm sure it's one thing for people to look and see two older women talking about the way things used to be, but also we weren't killing the planet then, you know?
Oh, I don't agree with that. We just didn't know it.
Maybe in different ways. But we were, my grandmother, I'm thinking about my grandma, so maybe I should clarify. Like, she always had a garden. She canned her own green beans and tomatoes, and she washed her paper towels and hung them to dry. She washed her tinfoil and reused it. Like, there
I
was,
still do.
she was a mom who, during the Depression, right? She learned really how to be super frugal. And being frugal doesn't mean you're poor. And there has been a real culture around frowning on people who hang their laundry in their yards because their neighbors can see their underpants, or you name it. There's so much judgment
Well,
around.
in Florida, I think they've changed this, but at least one town in Florida, it was illegal to grow a garden in your front yard.
Mhm,
You're supposed to have grass and flowers.
right.
Ridiculous things. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And, you know, really, the damage started with the Industrial Revolution and child labor and all those kinds of things in England and Europe and so forth. And then it came here, and first there were antibiotics and medicines that had never been discovered before in all those thousands of years that we were here on the planet. Yeah. But from that point, the technology increased the information, and the way of putting information together to create these new technologies just went rampant.
Mhm,
And I think that's really when we got into, because almost all of that stuff is either mineral or oil based.
right. Plastic included.
We really started raping the earth. We need to stop that
Yeah.
and find responsible ways to, and new resources that can be taken in such a way. You know, our old native way is that if we're going to take an animal and or a plant, because they all sacrifice their lives for us, right? We give gratitude. We give something back that's going to nourish the rest of them. Yeah. if we could go back to, and that's what your grandmother was doing by saving those paper towels, that
Right.
tinfoil. If we could relearn that and get out of our selfishness that says, oh, I want what I want now, and I'm going to have it one way or another. Yeah. If we could get back to that place of, no, we're community, and we're not just community with other human beings. We're community with the animals and the plants and the trees and the water and the mountains and the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we could get back to that point of honoring and respecting everything and giving back for what we take, I think this could all be healed.
Wow, that's beautiful, Robin. Thank you. That last paragraph was just beautiful. I think that's a good place for us to end. It's almost 11:30, so we've been talking for almost an hour. So thank you
Wow, I
again.
made it through without coughing too much.
You did. And again, this is Robin Youngblood, and all of her information will be in the show notes.
Thank you so much.